Let's compare the two M5 Pro silicon to see if the upgrade is worth it or not. And while we're at it, let's take a comprehensive look all the way back to the M1 Pro. So we're going to take a look at 5 generations of the Pro silicon. That's going to be very interesting. Let's jump in. I'm ArtIsRight. I have already released a video on a comprehensive look at the entire M5 series. Link to that will be in the description. Also, the Studio Display XDR review will be coming soon. However, the first initial impression link will be in the description too. It's information dense. Highly recommend you check that out. As usual, please pause this video so you can analyze the result yourself in addition to the analysis I'll be sharing with you. Timestamp to the various tests will be coming at some point in the future. This channel is fully self-funded. If you find the information that I'm sharing with you helpful and you'd like to help contribute to the cause, I'll leave a link to my tip jar in the description. YouTube Super Thanks works as well. And if the only thing that you can do is tapping on that like button and subscribing if you haven't already, I appreciate that equally the same. If you want to share this with at least a few of your friends and colleagues, I would appreciate that too. And lastly, please remember to be kind in a comment if I make any mistake. It's a one-person show after all. Now, I already talked about this in numerous videos already that I have released, that this time around we're taking a look at the super and performance core, and some of the exported tasks are not utilizing all the system resources properly, meaning that they're just not utilizing the performance core, so they're just left blank when they should have been used to speed up performance. Now let's take a look at the test system. There's a lot to talk about in this one. First, there are size variation. Now, in the past, I've done some testing before already. Size variation contributes very minutiae amount to the overall timing that you get on these. Apple have done a really great job with thermal management, and I will argue that I would tell you to choose the size that you want with the silicon that you want, meaning that if you want a light machine to take on the road with you, but you have a need for the best silicon out there, get the 14-inch with the M5 Max. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That's all I'm going to say. Don't worry about throttling. Don't worry about these things. Don't worry about what YouTube recommendations are, including myself. Get what you need. All right. With that said, there are two M5 Pros. There's the base and the top silicon. When I'm talking about this, I'm just referring to the silicon. Interesting enough, on the 14-inch, you start out with the base, but you can pay $200 more to upgrade to the top silicon. We're going to see if that number is worthwhile or not. When you start at a 16-inch, you're always at the top silicon. Interestingly enough, you're not really increasing that many cores. 1 more super core, 2 more performance core, and 4 more GPU. Memory bandwidth is still the same. That means that this is definitely a variance of the other silicon, right? 24 gigabytes of memory, that's pretty much equal 1 terabyte SSD. All these are really great amount. So let's continue. But before we do that, I do want to mention one more thing, that if you want to stick with the base silicon, you only have the option for 24 or 48 gigabytes of memory. If you want 64, well, you have to spring to upgrade to the top silicon. Now, you can do that on the 14-inch, but you have to go to the top silicon before that option is enabled. So sometimes you do have to upgrade the variants first. All right, let's take a look at the rest of the machine in the lineup that we are testing. The M4 Pro generation definitely have been retested for this cycle. The rest of the machine, I'm using previous testing results. Same thing with the M4 Max. It has been retested along with M5. For the regular vanilla machine, M4 and M5 has been retested, and all these desktop Mac has been retested. Not all of the configurations are possible for me to test. I mean, it's just financially not feasible, but on every single one of the slides, I put down the resources that are using. Pay attention to those on the app they're using on those specific tasks. It's going to give you a really great idea for an extrapolation of data. Now, I'm approaching this with a pro state of mind, and I want to know what the performance is on day one. Because a lot of times is that we shouldn't really be buying a hardware for a future promise of like a hardware support thing or a software support thing. For instance, Lightroom Classic did not release GPU import rendering until version 14.5.1 in late 2025. The Pro series have been around since like 2021 or so. Just some perspectives there to think about. All right, configuration and buyer's guide will be at the end. Remember SoC segmentation? Where you're looking at the Pro right now, it sits in between the Pro oriented and the Pro. Now, you can really go for a little bit more Pro. I will advocate as follows. If you're just jumping into the Mac platform the first time, or if you're a seasoned Mac user already and you are a paid photographer or a video pro, go with the Mac Silicon. It's going to stretch you a much longer way. Machines are going to last longer, and majority of the tasks that you do now in photo and video workflow can utilize the Mac Silicon. All right, I'm getting off my soapbox. All right, the best upgrade priority to get the most bang for your buck, start out with memory. The next thing to do would be to upgrade the chip family. For example, if you want to get 128 gigabytes of memory, well, there's no real way for you to do it in the Pro. You have to go to the MAX silicon. SSD storage, and I would say chip variants last, provided a condition, meaning that the amount of RAM you want to upgrade does not exceed what that chip variant that you chose can do. Otherwise, you have to use this chip variant upgrade. There's no way about it. All right, Nano-Texture. I made a video talking about that. I'll leave a link to it in the description. I'll probably do a follow-up video sometime in the near future. We'll see when that comes. All right, calibration. This passed for both software and hardware calibration. I was able to do a fine-tuned calibration, and as usual, I always recommend for Creative Pro, set this up as a new machine. Don't bring the data in, especially if you're an Intel holdout. Definitely don't do a time machine or a system migration from Intel. Just start fresh. You're going to be much better off that way. Here's how you read the test charts. SSD. So when it comes to this, remember that you can always expand. It starts with a healthy amount now, but you can always expand by an SSD, hard drive, NAS, DAS, and so forth. If you're getting an external SSD though, I highly recommend getting a USB 4 or Thunderbolt connection. This way macOS was sent the trim, the cleanup command properly so that your SSD life lasts longer, and it also runs faster too as SSDs start to get full. Speed wise, the M5 generation this time around doubled the previous generation. No more slow SSDs, but you don't need to spend the most money on getting the fastest SSD possible. I made this video a while back, but the information is still relevant today. Highly recommend that you check that out. Link will be in the description. All right, when it comes to RAM, pretty much RAM is just non-upgradable. There's no way to plug in external RAM to the system. Think about your use case. If this is going to be your primary machine, if you want to keep your machine longer, upgrade for more RAM now is going to do you a lot more good down the road. So those are just things to think about. Think about your use case and modality, and remember, they're not upgradable. Best thing to do if you already have a Mac, you're not sure, restart your system, activity monitor, memory tab, tile your window in a way that you can see memory pressure, start running through your workflow. If you can push your workflow hard, see where it is, see where the pressure is going to be. If screen, you're good with the amount that you have. If it's yellow or red, think about getting more. It's going to do you a lot more good in the long run. And if you open crazy tabs like I do, replicate that. Don't change the way how you're doing something because you really want to give it a fair evaluation. Personally, I like iStat menu a little bit better. I'll leave a link to this in the description. It keeps track of your history and usage a little bit longer. We're now finally starting at 24 gigabytes of memory. You don't have to no longer worry about upgrading RAMs and everything. That's good. Now for these, I have the power set to auto. I've run tests in the past already when we do high power or low power. It doesn't change much like the time, especially on a high power one. Leave it to auto, you're gonna be fine. It's not gonna really change much. All right, these are the version I've tested, and there are slowdown trends that are happening over the years, so maybe sometimes getting more is a little bit better overall. Lightroom Classic, when we take a look at this, there's a big shrug there. And part of the reason why is because on import, it's utilizing all of the cores. On export, it's not. Even though the GPU are being utilized, and this attributes to a lot of the time looking really wonky. So now let's take a look at the result from the one-to-one preview. Interestingly enough, do you guys notice this? This is the base M5 Pro and the 14-inch one that's pulling up slightly ahead than the 16-inch. Shouldn't be possible, but it is. Right? When we add in the rest of the machine and lineup, and this is starting to frame the perspectives a little bit, meaning that if it's scaling according to the generation, this is probably right. But let's take a look. Ultra is the very top there. I put that in as a reference. So we have the M4 Pro, M3 Pro, M5 Pro suddenly popped up over here in the 14-inch one. M1 Pro and the M2 Pro is performing dead last. In fact, the M5 Pro top silicon is also trailing behind the M1 Pro just a little bit. Something is definitely off there. And yes, this test has been ran a couple times with this data, verifying that this is the case. Now, one of the things that people have been saying that, you know, they need to optimize this. One thing that I will say right now is I had a conversation with Adobe engineer. One thing they told me was they don't design or optimize these apps for a specific silicon. They optimize for the platform. So my guess right now is that it could be a bug or something in macOS, but it's also not specific to the M5 generation. This is pretty much permeated throughout because you see there from the result, it's not as consistent as you want it to be. All right, this is a little bit more in line. We're having more CPU and GPU on this CPU and GPU based task is making a bit of a difference, but let's see if this really scales up with the rest of the machine. M3 Ultra as a reference again. M4 Pro is coming out slightly ahead, right? So that gives you something to think about. Is this really slower or should it be faster? That's the first thing. Is the program running correctly or not? M3 Pro, this is where the base M5 Pro is behind the M3 Pro generation. Yeah, this is a smaller machine, but nonetheless, it should not be that much slower. M1 Pro and M2 Pro is really not doing that good on this one. Interestingly enough, the M2 Pro has not been performing that well at all when I'm running these tests, which is kind of like interesting to really see. All right, Lightroom Classic HDR Merge, when we take a look at this, they are exactly the same because they are the same generation silicon. This is pretty much broken down by the generation 5, 4, this is the 3, the 2, and the 1. Timing are identical by the generation on that one. The rest of the machine, and let's take a look at Lightroom Classic Panorama Merge. For this one, well, same amount of memory. The 16-inch one is doing it a little bit faster than the 14-inch model. Very interesting there, right? Are the cores contributing some difference? Possibly. But more interesting though is I would probably maybe discard the result from these two because they're taking way too long. And this was tested during the version of Lightroom where there's kind of like some bugs on here. But this has not been consistent, so I probably discard these last two right now. But nonetheless, you can see that the M5, well, they're performing at the top, not too bad at all. M3 is coming just right behind, but M4 is taking like 2 minutes. Again, those numbers don't generally make sense despite having similar amount of memory. I mean, this is 36. Yes, it does have more, but these also have 24. So something's not right. Lightroom Classic AI Noise Reduction. This is still a GPU-based task, despite the fact that it should be running on the NPU. And this entire 5 years or 6 years since the M series have been around, it once ran on the NPU and that was it. They took it away. There's a lot of issues to that, which is why it's not running on it yet. So this is what we have. GPU-based tasks, and you can see that the slightly more core ones is about 3 seconds faster. Now, this 3 seconds attributes to a $200 upgrade. You have to really think about if it's worth it or not. Now, 3 seconds is not nothing because you're not only just working one files. When you're working through hundreds or thousands of files, 3 seconds per file makes a big difference. They start to compound up. So for this one, we have the M5 clustering at the top, M4. Interestingly enough, M2 Pro is coming ahead of the M3 Pro. Timing are close enough on these two. They are within 2 seconds, close so that they are within somewhat a margin of error, but I wouldn't say like they're like exactly the same per se. And then M1 Pro is performing that last. Interestingly enough, on the M5 generation, the Pro, we start to see the time cut almost in half now, right? So we're now seeing faster performance on just this GPU-based task. So it tells you that the GPU performance is good. So what happens when we do same AI noise reduction to 10 files all at once? This is where we start to see the variation and the time gap. Still less than a minute though. It's, you know, the little ones are performing just fine there. And I would argue that if you start to run in multiple apps and so forth, having more RAM is definitely going to do you a lot of good there. So what happens, and let's see the way how this scale. M5, M4, interestingly enough, M2 is pulling up ahead on this one. M3 is slightly behind, performing very similar to the M1 Pro. Some of these are a little strange, but like I said, these 3 generation machine has not been retested. It's using the previous result, so keep that in mind too. All right, lastly, we're going to do Lightroom Classic AI Sky and Subject Masking for the Classic test, and for this, timing are exactly the same because they are the exact generation silicon. When we take a look at this, you can see a clustering. Interestingly enough, not by generation because this is supposed to be slower, but it's faster by 10 seconds. No more margin of error on that one. M5 is here, 3. Right? Clustering, 2, and then 1. Kind of makes sense a little bit, but this M4 Pro just happens to be kicking butt at this point in time for some reason. Anyway, here are the rest of the results, and let's take a look at Lightroom. So this is Lightroom desktop version. Export is doing a lot of wonky thing in a very exact same way, and interestingly enough, the 14-inch one, the M5 Pro base, is pulling up just slightly ahead. I would say these are within like, what, 5 seconds of each other? They are close enough, but the fact that this is now tying with the other machine is rather interesting. When we add in the rest of the machine in the lineup, M4 Pro, M3 Pro is coming ahead, M2 Pro, that's not doing that well in Lightroom Classic, is coming up ahead of the M5 series, and those get pushed down just slightly above M1 Pro. I wouldn't go by these scores, and I wouldn't worry about this being a hardware issue because if it is, it would just affect the M5. This is affecting literally throughout, as you can see right now. Many of them are just not scaling properly. All right, capture 1. the poster child for the way how it is supposed to perform. When we take a look at this, yes, having more CPU core that just only use CPU only makes sense. Slightly faster. Does this make sense? Well, it depends, right? It depends on what you really want to do and the type of work that you do. But if you're using Capture One predominantly, you want to get the fastest time possible, this will be one of those things to consider. When we add the rest of the machine into the lineup, Capture One, I like it because it scales in a way how it's supposed to. M5, M4, M3, M2, and M1, and they're all pros, by the way. I just skipped the pro part to speed up what I'm saying. And I have the M3 Max at the top. It just have more CPU, so it performs that much faster. But this still, overrules the generational improvement in the M3 Ultra, despite being 2 generations behind, is still performing really well. Here are the rest of the machine, and now let's take a look at export and see how much of a difference we're going to get by adding 4 more GPUs. 10 seconds. That's all you're saving. That's marginal. This is why, well, maybe don't upgrade, right? Especially if you're choosing the 14-inch one. All right, the M5 series 4. Interesting enough, the M2 is performing faster than M3, and that's where the M1 Pro is. So some interesting result we're seeing right now. Even Capture One is not immune to all these strangeness happening with the machine. One thing to note as well is that every single one of these machines, when I'm doing these tests, have all been clean install and the app are freshly downloaded, the latest version. So I'm not upgrading from previous OS, upgrading app or anything like that. They're all fresh and clean installed. So let's take a look at Photoshop. We're going to use Puget Bench, and for this timing are pretty much exactly the same. If you're just only doing Photoshop, maybe the vanilla silicon, for example, just the M5 will do just fine. Upgrade the memory to 32 if you only need that much. However, if you need more, yeah, you definitely need to go to the Pro series. Here are the rest of the machine, the way how they're scaling right now. So we have like the 5, the 4, the M3 generation 2, and the 1. These are scaling the way how we would have expected one generation to the next. And if you take a look at this now, Photoshop score is close to double. Not really quite double yet, the M1 Pro series, but it's getting there. The rest of the machine in the lineup, let's take a look at the encoder decoder engine with Final Cut Pro H.264. So the M5 series, a little bit faster encoder decoder engine than the M4, and between the M3 to the M1 Pro, those are performing just about the same. They are within a margin of each other, but definitely there was improvement in the M4 Pro and more improvement in the M5 Pro series. Same thing is going to be reflected in the HEVC H.265, faster there, a little bit slower, and these are clustering together. So you can see how there are improvement in the encoder decoder engine. And lastly, when it comes time to ProRes, they are pretty much, I would say, within a margin of each other. They're not too further apart, but you get the chance to see there how this is scaling, and it's also going down the list as we would have expected per generation. AfterEffects. So for this, let's take a look at score. Kind of close to each other, right? Not too far apart. When we add in the rest of the machine in the lineup, well, we can see that the M1 Pro is right there. This is double the amount of score. So yeah, it is about, 10 times faster, double the speed, right? So it's actually that much better. We now see the generational performance in the M5 series chip and in the Pro series chip. Same thing is being reflected, by the way, on the MAX silicon, where generation per generation, we're seeing 10 to 20%, but when we aggregate a 5 generation in, it's really quite impressive. And the rest is there. Now let's take a look at Premiere Pro, Puget Bench again. Scores are just slightly apart, not too far. When we add in the rest of the previous generation machine, for example, the M4 Pro, we have that. And I hadn't had the chance to go in and test the other machines yet, just because Puget Bench did change some of the algorithms, so I can't use the previous score. So these are new scores, and this is what I have so far as a good reference point. And let's take a look at DaVinci Resolve. Timing are fairly close to each other, the scores, right? A little bit lower on the 14-inch one, which does make sense. It has slightly less resources. But when we add in the rest of the machine, interestingly enough, I mean, the Ultra is pulling up at the very top. That's a reference machine there. But this is about half. So, I mean, it does show a lot of improvement over the M1 Pro generation. And I would say the M1 Pro is getting a little bit slow behind, especially when you start to look at this. For instance, like the M1 Pro is falling somewhere in between like M1 and M2. It's just like over here. Not that far up the chart as we would want to be. So, things to think about. All right, that has been a retrospective look at all of the Pro Silicons going 5 generations back. Yes, I know some of the results are wonky now. I wish they weren't, but that's kind of where we're at with everything at this point in time. Hopefully in the next few OS releases, those get resolved a little bit more, and also the other previous generation machine are able to optimize a little bit more too, because that shouldn't be a problem nowadays, but it kind of happens to be. All right. So if you're a new buyer to the Mac, my recommendations are as follows. If you are a working pro, if you make money doing this task for photo and video, either look at the Pro machine. I highly recommend looking at the Max, or looking at the Pro Silicon, but I really recommend jumping to the Max Silicon, because majority of tasks are able to use that now and get the machine that you need. Don't listen to pundits, what they have to say. If you want a 14-inch with a Max Silicon, do it. Nobody's really stopping you. Now, if you are a upgrader, really think about why you're upgrading, right? Think about the generation you're in, and to look at the performance is going to be worthwhile or not. Now, if you're just going to simply upgrade, for example, from the M4 to M5 or M3 to M5, I would probably say like maybe not the generational upgrade like that, but if you have a justification to upgrade the RAM, to upgrade the SSD or storage in the system, whatever that may be, I think that's a much better justification to do so, because that's going to be much more needed in your workflow. That's just my personal thought on that one. So it really all depends on that. And remember, the best thing that you can do for upgrading is follow this priority list. Number 4, yes, does creep up when you're really taking a look at number 1, because there is a max number 1, but if you can work within that max frame from like just the number 1, you're going to get much more upgrading RAM than the variants of the silicon. So that's always going to be the case. And if you want to get even more performance, literally just jump the family. It's going to give you a much better performance that way. Remember SoC segmentation? I already mentioned that this Pro Silicon, it really is kind of like a pro oriented and pro one. It's kind of like in between. And then if you are a fully functioning pro, you're making money, you're making commission from doing this, go to Max series. It's going to take you that much longer. Now, this is a chart based on my recommendation. Read this across, good, better, best. Take a look at the app you're using, and I would pick the highest silicon on that list. If you want the best, sometimes you have to go with like the Ultra Silicon, which is a desktop. It's not the modality that you need. So go for the next one down, which would probably be the Max Silicon. Whatever generation that may be, you can take a look there. And also remember one more thing too, that you don't always have to buy the latest generation, right? If you're looking to get one now, you're looking to save a little bit more money, Apple has a fantastic refurb program. You can always look in the used market, or you just kind of like exchange and so forth. There are so many different ways to get the previous generation, or even just clear in stock, that will give you a really good deal on the previous generation versus the current one. So those are things to think about. And lastly, if you're wondering, should you upgrade to silicon or not, or if you know the silicon that you have, the best thing to do is take a screenshot of this, circle the silicon that you're on, and then follow that line to see what's the next silicon upgrade that's going to give you the most benefit. This is something that I have drawn out for you. Hope that you find these helpful. Anyway, been a lot of information here. I think we're seeing on many of the tests that finally 5 generations in, we're cutting the performance in half, about 20% per generation on average. It's really not quite that. Some generations are better than the other, but Apple's doing a pretty good job here. The one thing though that I may have not mentioned yet is that once we have reached a plateau on the 18 cores, right, for the CPU, that's pretty much the same on the Max as well. So you're not really gaining that much more by upgrading the Max, you're just gaining the GPU, but jumping to those like higher GPU in the Max Silicon does show a lot of difference. I'll leave a link to the various other videos that I've done testing on these things in the description, and why I recommend, for example, the M5 Max base silicon. If you're okay with that one with just 36 gigabytes of memory, I still think that one's going to reign supreme. Anyway, hope you find this helpful. Give this a like, subscribe to the bell if you're new. I'm Art, and I thank you for your time.